Hi everyone, my name is Xiaoli. I'm a Chinese woman from Henan. Yes, my English is excellent. You'll be surprised, but I didn't learn it in school, and I don't even take extra language classes. It's more complicated than that, and I'll tell you why. In case you didn't know, our country has strict criminal laws. For example, theft. There are certain kinds of theft, but stealing manholes, yes, the ones that lie in the middle of the road, they're also called sewer manholes. Now, they can be executed for that. We also have the concept of the death penalty. Why such a law? It was also introduced for a reason. The fact is that at one time, these manholes were stolen en masse. That is, people stole them and then sold them as metal on the market. They made some money, but the most terrible thing was not the theft itself, but its consequences. I had an acquaintance named Wen, a girl from a good family, an excellent student, a pride. Anyway, she was driving down the road one day, in a big hurry to see her grandmother. She ran into a place where there was supposed to be a manhole, and there wasn't one. There was an accident. The car flipped over. Not only was she hurt, but she hit a passerby. They both became disabled. This story was the beginning of the new laws. There were many such cases, and many lives were lost. So, our leadership decided that impeachment would simply discourage the desire to make money at the expense of innocent people's lives. As for me, I am an honest citizen of my country. I did not break the rules. I abided by the law. It had nothing to do with fear, but with my upbringing. My father married my stepmother when I was only 2 years old. My mother left us and ran away. No one tried to deceive me. I knew the truth right away, growing up with it. And my stepmother didn't ask me to call her Mama. I called her Muchin, literally translated as mother, but you know what I mean. She was always strict, not a bit of tenderness, attention only when she needed it. She was a judge in our district. Maybe that's why her behavior was so cold. I forgot to tell you, she didn't have any children of her own. They don't share that with me, just as a fact. But she had a good rise up the ladder. And so, while she was sending criminals to prison and exonerating the innocent, my dad took on the role of housewife. No, I'm not saying anything. He's a great cook. He cleans. He does the laundry. But as a father, he didn't come out. And as a mother, he didn't either. Now, if you thought there was no such thing as orphans living with parents, I'll tell you one thing, there is. Some ridiculous situation happened that day and year. We got a lot of torrential downpours. I was running home from school so I wouldn't get even wetter. And then I got a call from the grandmother of that friend of mine. Remember, Wen? I used to talk to her sometimes. Grandma was crying so hard that I couldn't quite hear what had happened. Wen, she's gone, she cried, and I had just bought her an asthma inhaler. I wanted to drop it off. I was so terrified, I didn't know what to do. I stopped in the middle of the street, and my phone fell out of my hands. I was so angry, so mad at those hatches. I don't know how I had the strength, but I was so angry that I picked up one of the covers and threw it aside. The lid hit some kind of hole and it immediately disappeared under the water. Only a couple of minutes later, I realized that there were security cameras in front of me. My first thought was, I could be executed for this. Immediately, my phone rang again, and I shuddered. It was my father. He asked where I was. He wanted to pick me up in his car, but I refused, lying that I was already close to the house. Sooner or later, they would find me. What would the judge do to me then? Out of fear, I decided not to go back home. I ran home to Wen, hugged her mother for the last time, hugged her myself, and decided to take the subway somewhere else in the city. I got on a departing train. We passed a couple of stations, and then it stopped abruptly. All the passengers inside didn't understand why. What was going on? But it didn't take long for us to get an answer. "Flooding! Flooding!" shouted the driver. His eyes said it all. We couldn't go any further because the tunnel was flooded. The rain was too heavy and it wouldn't stop. I thought that if I died here, it would be better than at the hands of some munchkin. We stood on the seats with our feet, old people, children, women, and men with me. The children were placed on the shoulders of the men, and water quickly filled the wagon. I climbed up as far as I could. All we could do was hope. I tried to break the windows, but it didn't work. Others repeated after me, but it didn't work either. Help was on the way, but we realized there was another problem. The oxygen was running out. Finally, the water reached almost to the top and flooded the windows. I could barely keep my head out of the water. And then there was such an eerie, creepy silence. "Hello? Mom? I'm going to die. I love you. Goodbye." Someone called their mother, and tears rolled down my throat in a clump. I don't even know who my mother is. How would my father take this? The water was coming in faster and faster. Finally, we heard a noise on the roof. The rescue workers had arrived. They cut a hole in the ceiling and started pulling us out one by one. My phone was sinking in the water and wasn't working. I was one of the children and teenagers pulled out first. I'm breathing! That was the first thing I realized. It's not time to die yet. Together with the other children, I was put in a helicopter of an international organization. At that moment, I had no idea how much my life would change because of that hatch cover. I was given first aid. I was so cold after standing in the water for 2.5 hours, but overall, I was okay. I had a little girl about 4 years old with me. She was crying a lot without her mom, but I tried to calm her down, and then she started choking. The doctors didn't understand what was wrong and wanted to put an oxygen mask on her, but I knew what the wheezing was. I took Gwen's inhaler out of my bag and sprayed a couple of times in her mouth. Then the girl started breathing again. "Hi, I'm Gwen. I'm working here. You did great," she told me in terrible Chinese, but I smiled. I decided from that moment on that I was going to help her. Throughout the next 24 hours, I actively helped rescuing the children. Gwen wondered how I could do that, but I always had excellent training thanks to my dad. He took me to first aid and emergency behavior classes. "Where are your parents?" "I don't have them. I'm an orphan." I lied. I had to, because the thought of the death penalty terrified me more than life on the streets. Gwen, without thinking twice, offered me a job with her organization, and I took it. I went with her to the nearest country, India. I learned English and rented a place to live in Delhi. My new life was good. The only thing was that I missed my father. There were days when I was ill or there were delays in wages, and Gwen helped me out. But one day, she went off to head office in another country, and I was having a hard time coping on my own. That's when I got really sick. You know what? A virus in my body was rapidly destroying me. I woke up thirsty and noticed bottles of clean water in my room, as well as an oxygen concentrator. There were Chinese inscriptions, as well as Chinese food and medicine from my family. I didn't understand where they came from. I thought Gwen had taken care of it. I was cured in about 4 weeks. The whole time I was finding food, medicine, and money at my door. Then I wanted to go home even more, but I couldn't. Then Gwen came over. She said those packages were definitely not from her, and she called me to a press conference downtown where almost every one of our staff came. There was good food, lots of familiar faces, experts, volunteers like me. It was cool. And then, amongst the crowd, I saw a face that was familiar. To my horror, Muchen. She looked just as stiff, only there was a glove on her left hand. I tried to avoid her, but she found me anyway. "Let's go home." "No, I'm not going with you. I'm sorry." I went outside, but the guards grabbed me there. I resisted and they gave me an injection, and I fell asleep. I opened my eyes only when we arrived at the house. "You can't decide my fate. You're a cold monster. Have you even asked me what I want? Why are you running my life? You have never been my mother and never will be. You will send me to the death penalty. I don't want it. I don't want it." "You're right. The hatch you ripped out wasn't found. That amounts to theft. There are severe penalties for that. You left. I gave you a chance to come to your senses. You think your father and I didn't know where you were? You ate the food he cooked you, drank the medicine we bought you. What? It was you? But how did you find me? You forgot about my ties. What you wouldn't do to execute me, right? She said nothing, only took the glove off her hand. What is this? Prosthesis. I gave my hand as punishment for my daughter being a criminal. But officially, you're dead, so I only got off with that and also lost my job. I couldn't believe it. She did that for me, knowing where I was and that I was alive. But why? Because that's how it runs in a family. I didn't give birth to you, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. I just don't show it. I cried. I hugged her and begged her for forgiveness. Muchin hugged me back after all these years. And then she said, "Let's go home. Daddy missed you." Tell me, guys, did you like my story? Write your opinion about it in the comments below the video. Don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel.